Tunde's dream had always burned inside him like a quiet fire. He didn't know where it came from or why it had taken root, but it was undeniable. It had been there for as long as he could remember. This feeling that life was meant to be more than what he saw in Ibara. Ibara was a small town sitting on the outskirts of Lagos, tucked away from the city's chaotic street, yet so close that you could hear the traffic noise from the far-off highway on a quiet evening. Life here was simple, and for many people, that was enough. They lived with what they had and didn't ask for more. The house Tunde grew up in was modest, nothing to boast about. The roof sometimes leaked when it rained, and the walls had peeling paint. The ground beneath their feet was made of the familiar red clay that seemed to hold everything together, but never quite allowed it to stand up straight. His father, Babajide, was a mechanic. He ran a small business in their backyard, fixing the cars of neighbors and the occasional stranger who needed a tune-up. The work was hard, and the pay was often unpredictable. But Babajide loved what he did. When you can fix something with your hands, Tunde, he would always say, you are always needed. There's value in hard work. Tunde respected his father, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant for something different. His mother, Mama Kemi, was a street vendor. Every morning at 5 a.m., she would fry akara and puff-puff in the small kitchen at the backyard, her deep fryer sizzling as she shaped the dough. By 7 a.m., she would have a small cart parked near the market, selling to customers who lined up to buy breakfast. The smell of the hot fried food would fill the air, attracting hungry people and the occasional wanderers. I'll teach you the value of hard work, my son, Mama Kemi often said. She was proud of the business, proud of how they managed, even when things were tough. But she also wanted Tunde to dream bigger. Hard work will take you far, but knowledge is what opens doors, she told him once, while they walked side by side at the kitchen table shaping dough. Tunde could always feel the love and sacrifice in his parents' voices, but he couldn't escape the fact that there was a whole world beyond Ibara, one that seemed to promise bigger things. One day, while helping his father in the backyard, Tunde saw a shiny new car pass by. Its windows were rolled down, music blaring, and the driver, a man in a smart suit, waved at someone ahead. The car sped past, and Tunde's heart skipped a bit. He looked at the dust the car left behind, the same red dust that covered his clothes and his dreams. That's where I want to be one day, he whispered to himself. That night, as Tunde lay in his small bed, the weight of the world seemed to rest on his shoulders. He made a promise to himself. He would chase his dreams, no matter how hard or impossible it seemed. He would leave Ibara and build a life for himself, a life bigger than the cramped house and a dusty street. But how? He had no money, no connections, and no real plans other than his own stubborn will. Tunde was 14 when he started to take his dreams more seriously. Every day after school, he would rush home to help his parents. There was no time for playing, no time for the fun his friends enjoyed. His days were spent studying and working. By 5 a.m., he would be awake, helping his father in the workshop, learning how to fix small parts and clean tools. In the evenings, he would help his mother shape the dough for her akara, learning the secret ingredients that made the fried balls of dough so delicious. School was where Tunde felt the weight of his dreams most acutely. The local secondary school in Ibara Secondary, wasn't well funded. The classrooms were overcrowded, the chalkboard cracked, and the textbooks outdated. The teachers were kind, but many of them were overworked, and the curriculum often felt irrelevant. It was hard for Tunde to concentrate when his mind was filled with thoughts of future he could barely imagine. But there was one thing that set Tunde apart from the other students: his hunger for knowledge. He would read everything he could get his hands on. If he never had a book, he would borrow it. He spent hours in the library, poring over books about business, technology, and the stories of people who had overcome great odds. The library was his sanctuary, a place where he could shut out the noise of the world and focus on building the life he dreamed of. His schoolmates often laughed at him, calling him the bookworm. But Tunde didn't care. He knew that books held a key to the future. He would study late into the night, even when the power went out and the only light came from a flickering candle. He memorized what he could, determined to make something of himself. But life was hard, and the struggles of his family weighed on him. Tunde's parents worked harder than ever. Mama Kemi's business had become more difficult due to the rise in number of street vendors. Competition was fierce, and the local government had started cracking down on street sales. One morning, Mama Kemi came home defeated. She had been chased away from her usual spot by a group of government officials who were enforcing a new rule. "I am sorry, my son," she said, her face pale. "They are making it harder for people like us to survive." Tunde felt the weight of the moment. His mother's business, which had been the backbone of their household, was crumbling. He had to do something, but what? He was just a boy with a dream, with no money, no connections. Yet something inside him refused to accept that his family's struggles would become his own. One day, a light appeared in the form of an announcement. The school principal, Mr. Olumide, had come up with an exciting idea. The school will host a business competition, with the grand prize being a scholarship to a prestigious university in Lagos. Tunde's heart raced as he heard the details. The prize was everything he had ever dreamed of: a chance to leave Ibara, a chance to go to a real university, a chance to build the future he had always longed for. The competition would require students to create a business plan that was innovative and realistic. The winning plan would receive mentorship from a successful entrepreneur in Lagos, along with a full scholarship to study business at a prestigious university. Tunde knew this was his chance. It was more than just an opportunity to win. It was his only way out of Ibara. But there was one problem. He didn't have money to buy textbooks or business materials. He didn't have a computer to help him create a polished presentation. He didn't even have the resources most of the other students will have. But he had something more valuable: his mind. Tunde spent the next 2 weeks working on his business plan. Every spare moment he had was spent researching ideas and refining his concept. He didn't have fancy tools, but he made do with what he had. He borrowed a second-hand laptop from a neighbor, used the school's library, and wrote everything by hand. The idea that took shape in his mind was simple but powerful: a mobile app to connect small businesses in Ibara with customers in the surrounding areas. It was a revolutionary idea for a small town. Many of the businesses in Ibara were struggling to find customers, and Tunde believed that technology could change that. He imagined an app where customers could easily find local vendors, from food sellers to tailors, and place orders directly from their phones. The app could help people like Mama Kemi, who had difficulty reaching new customers because of the competition and lack of visibility. After 2 weeks of sleepless nights, Tunde was ready. He stood before the judges, trembling slightly, but he was determined. He presented his idea, speaking passionately about how the app will transform local businesses, help vendors find customers, and provide a reliable income for families like his own. When he finished, there was a long silence in the room. The judges exchanged glasses, and Tunde felt his stomach tighten. Maybe it wasn't good enough. Maybe he had failed. But then, the lead judge, a businessman from Lagos named Mr. Adewale, stood up. "Young man," he said, his voice deep and serious, "you've shown us something we rarely see. You've shown us that you understand the power of technology, the needs of the people, and the future of business. This idea is remarkable." Tunde couldn't believe it. The scholarship was his. He had won the competition, and his life was about to change forever. Tunde's life in Ibara had always been one of hard work and sacrifice. But this victory changed everything. He was given a scholarship to a prestigious university in Lagos, one of the most respected institutions in Nigeria. He had always dreamed of this moment, but now that it was happening, he wasn't sure how to feel. The night before he left, Tunde sat with his parents in the small living room. Mama Kemi and Babajide had tears in their eyes as they hugged him tightly. "You've made us proud, Tunde," Babajide said, his voice thick with emotion. "Go and make something of yourself." "I will, Baba. I promise I'll make you proud," Tunde replied, his voice steady despite a lump in his throat. "I won't forget where I came from. I'll come back and help." The next day, Tunde left Ibara and red clay roads behind him and set out for Lagos, where a new world awaited him. Lagos was like nothing Tunde had ever seen. The moment he stepped off the buzz of the city overwhelmed him. It was a city of lights, noise, and endless movement. People walked briskly, cars honked constantly, and the skyscrapers loomed over the crowded streets. In Ibara, time moved slowly, but here everything moved at the speed of light. Tunde was both excited and scared. He had never been to such a big city, and it was hard to ignore the feelings of inadequacy that crept in as he saw the world surrounding him. The students at his new school were dressed in designer clothes, and they carried the latest gadgets. Tunde in his second-hand clothes felt like an outsider. He wondered if he belonged here, if someone like him could truly make a difference. The first few days at the university were overwhelming. He was surrounded by students who seemed to have it all: money, connections, and opportunities. They spoke with confidence, and their laughter filled the halls. Tunde tried to fit in, but his background and humble beginnings made him feel small. He was from a village where a smartphone was a luxury, and people only dreamt of having the kind of resources the students had. Despite the culture shock, Tunde was determined. He didn't come this far to fade into the background. He had a vision, and he wasn't going to let insecurity stop him. One evening, after a long day of lectures, Tunde sat in his small dorm room, reviewing his business plan. He had managed to put together a basic prototype of his mobile app, but it wasn't enough. The competition in Lagos was fierce, and he knew that in the city, where opportunities were endless, the competition to stand out was just as endless. Tunde realized he would have to go beyond just developing the app. He had to make connections. He had to meet the right people. Tunde's first breakthrough came when he attended a campus event on entrepreneurship. It was a small gathering with local startup founders sharing their experiences. Tunde felt a spark of inspiration as he listened to the speakers talk about their struggles and triumphs. They weren't all rich kids with fancy backgrounds. Many of them had started with nothing, just like him. After the event, Tunde approached one of the speakers, a young entrepreneur named Emeka. Emeka had started a small tech company that helped local businesses set up e-commerce websites. He was originally from a small town in the east, and his story resonated with Tunde. I came from a village too, Emeka said, after hearing Tunde's story. It's not about where you start, it's about how hungry you are to succeed. I can see that hunger in you. If you ever need advice or mentorship, don't hesitate to reach out. Tunde's heart swelled with gratitude. This was exactly the kind of support he had searching for. Emeka's offer felt like a lifeline, a sign that he wasn't alone in this journey. Over the next few months, Tunde worked closely with Emeka, learning the ropes of business, from managing finances to pitching ideas to investors. Emeka introduced Tunde to people in the tech industry and helped him refine his app idea. With each meeting, Tunde grew more confident in his abilities. But even with Emeka's guidance, Tunde's challenges weren't over. His app still wasn't where he wanted it to be. The design was rough, the user interface clunky, and the coding was far from perfect. Tunde spent countless nights working on it, his eyes blurry from staring at the screen. He couldn't afford to hire professional developers, so he taught himself to code, using online tutorials and free resources. As Tunde got deeper into the business world, the obstacles began to pile up. There were technical challenges with the app, and the small funding he had saved up wasn't enough to cover the cost of hiring developers. Worse still, the pressure was mounting. He had to perform in a place where success was expected, where people had connections and resources that he didn't. One day he received a message that he would shake him to his core. Mama Kemi had fallen ill. His mother, who had always been the pillar of his strength in his family, was now bedridden. Tunde's heart ached as he read the message. He had sent money home every month to help with bills, but it didn't feel like enough. He couldn't be there for her. It felt like the world was crashing down around him. Lagos was a city full of opportunity, but it also made him feel small, lost in the vast sea of people and dreams. His dreams seemed so far out of reach, so distant, and all he wanted was to return home to care for his mother. For a few days, Tunde struggled with a wave of self-doubt. Was this all worth it? Was his dream even possible? But then something inside him shifted. He thought about the promise he made to his parents, that he would come back and help, that he would make something of himself. This wasn't just about himself anymore. It was about the people who believed in him. He picked himself up and decided he would fight harder than ever. He couldn't afford to give up now. Tunde's breakthrough came one fateful afternoon when he was invited to pitch his app to a group of investors who were looking for innovative ideas. He almost didn't go, doubting himself, but Emeka encouraged him. Do it for yourself, Tunde. Don't worry about what others think. Just present your idea as it is. There's no one like you, and that's your biggest strength, Emeka advised. On the day of the pitch, Tunde stood in front of the investors, trembling slightly. His heart was racing, but he reminded himself why he was there. He wasn't just pitching an app. He was pitching hope for his mother, for his family, and for everyone who had ever supported him. He spoke with passion, explained how his app would connect small businesses with local customers, how it would give vendors like his mother the chance to reach more people and grow their businesses. He showed them his app, clunky as it was, and outlined his vision for the future. When he finished, there was a long silence. Tunde's stomach tightened and he thought he had failed again. But then one of the investors spoke. This is exactly what we've been looking for. It's raw, it's real, and it addresses a genuine problem. We believe in you, Tunde. The investors agreed to fund his app's development, and they offered him a partnership with a prominent tech company to help refine it. Tunde couldn't believe his ears. He had done it. Months passed, and the app, now refined and polished, was launched. It quickly gained traction, connecting hundreds of local businesses with customers across Lagos. Tunde's name began to spread, and soon he was invited to speak at conferences and meet with other entrepreneurs. He had come a long way from the quiet boy who once stared longingly at the shiny car on the dusty road in Ibara. But Tunde never forgot where he came from. He returned to Ibara, not as a boy who dreamed of a better life, but as the man who had made it happen. When he arrived, he found his mother in much better health. The treatment was working, and her strength had returned. His father was still working on cars in the backyard, but now there was a new light in his eyes. They were proud of him. But Tunde knew the real triumph was in how far they had all come together. Tunde opened a tech hub in Ibara, giving young people in his community access to the tools and knowledge he had gained. He taught them how to create their own businesses, how to use technology to connect with the world, and how to believe that no dream was too big. He stood in front of the young men and women, the same red clay beneath his feet. But this time, the world felt different. The dream he once had seemed so distant, but now it was alive, pulsing in the hearts of everyone around him. He had chased his dreams, fought the obstacles, and returned home to show that no dream was too big for everyone willing to work hard enough to make it come true.